Hey guys, tonight we slip into 1609 Pisa, where the air smells of olive oil and wood smoke, and you're standing under a moonlit sky, clutching a clunky wooden tube that Galileo Galilei swears will unveil the heavens. Picture yourself in a cobblestone courtyard, the moon hanging like a chipped silver coin, casting shadows on Galileo's scribbled notes. He's fidgeting, muttering about lenses, and you're about to peer through his first telescope. A device so primitive you probably won't survive this without squinting. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in Galileo's world now, late at night, the kind of hour where even the crickets seem to hush for science. The telescope in your hands is a far cry from the sleek models you'd find in a modern observatory. It's a wooden tube, barely 2 feet long. With glass lenses, Galileo ground himself in a frenzy of trial and error. He's pacing nearby, his beard flecked with sawdust, explaining how he heard rumors of a Dutch spyglass that made far-off ships look close. That's the mainstream physics fact here. The telescope works by bending light through convex and concave lenses, focusing distant objects into a tiny, viewable image. It's basic optics, but in 1609 it's revolutionary, like inventing a time machine out of toast and string. Galileo's not just a stargazer. He's a showman with a knack for turning curiosity into spectacle. You can almost hear him chuckling as he tells you about the Dutch merchants who used these spyglasses to peek at rival ships' cargo from miles away. That's the quirky tidbit. Before telescopes were for stars, they were for snooping on trade routes. Imagine some guy in Amsterdam zooming in on a ship's manifest, hoping to undercut a deal on tulip bulbs. Galileo, though, saw bigger potential. He didn't just copy the Dutch design. He obsessed over it, grinding lenses late into the night, trying to make the stars themselves spill their secrets. You point the telescope upward, and the moon fills the lens. It's not the smooth, perfect orb the church insists it is. It's pockmarked, rugged, like a battlefield etched in silver light. This moment feels electric, but also dangerous. Physicists still argue whether Galileo knew how much trouble these lunar blemishes would cause him. The church held that the heavens were flawless, a divine clockwork. Your view through this shaky tube suggests otherwise, and Galileo's grinning like he's just stolen the moon's diary. You steady the telescope, your hands cold from the night air, and wonder how one man's curiosity could upend centuries of dogma. The courtyard around you is quiet, save for the occasional clatter of a passing cart. You imagine Galileo's neighbors peeking out, wondering why he's up so late, waving this weird stick at the sky. It's tempting to laugh at how basic this setup is. No tripods, no fancy mounts, just a man, a tube, and a dream. Yet, this is the birth of modern astronomy. You're not just looking at the moon, you're witnessing a pivot in how humans understand their place in the cosmos. Galileo's muttering about magnification now, something about 6 times closer, which sounds modest until you realize no one's ever done this before. You're holding history, and it's as wobbly as a cheap chair. As you adjust the telescope, the moon's craters come into focus, and you feel a strange calm. Maybe it's the soft glow of the moonlight or the rhythmic creak of Galileo's wooden floorboards as he paces. This isn't just about physics. It's about wonder, the kind that makes you forget the world for a while. You're tempted to nudge Galileo and ask if he's got snacks, but he's too busy sketching what he sees. His notebook's a mess of ink blots and wild lines, like a kid doodling during a lecture. That's your first hint that this guy's not just a scientist, he's an artist with a telescope, painting the sky with questions. You're still in Pisa, the moon hanging overhead like a lantern, but now you're hunched over a rickety table in Galileo's workshop, the air thick with the scent of beeswax and ground glass. Your hands are dusty from helping him polish lenses, a task that feels like rubbing stones to make magic. The telescope you peered through last section is no accident. It's the result of Galileo's obsessive tinkering, and tonight, you're grinding glass with him, chasing the perfect curve to capture starlight. The mainstream physics fact here is refraction. Light bends when it passes through glass, and Galileo's lenses use this to magnify the heavens, making the moon look close enough to touch. The simple optics, but in 1609, it's like discovering a cheat code for the universe. The workshop is a mess, with shavings, half-eaten bread, and a stray cat napping on a pile of papers. Galileo's muttering to himself, something about curvature and focal points, but you catch him sneaking glances at the moon through the window, like a kid eyeing a cookie jar. Here's the quirky tidbit. Galileo didn't just grind lenses. He once tried using water-filled glass spheres to magnify objects, an idea he abandoned after soaking his notes in a splashy mishap. You can't help but chuckle, imagining him mopping up his genius with a rag, cursing in Italian. You pick up a lens, its edges rough, and hold it to the candlelight. The glass warps the flame, stretching it into a wobbly streak. This is the heart of Galileo's telescope. 2 lenses, one convex to gather light, one concave to focus it. You're no optics expert, but you feel the weight of this moment. Galileo's not just crafting tools. He's crafting a new way of seeing. You try polishing a lens yourself, following his lead, but your hands are clumsy, and the glass squeaks under the cloth. Galileo laughs, saying something about patience, but you're pretty sure he's mocking your technique. Outside, the night is quiet, save for the distant hoot of an owl. You wonder how Galileo stays awake for these late-night sessions. Maybe it's the thrill of discovery, or maybe he's just stubborn. Physicists still argue whether Galileo's lens grinding was more art than science. His methods were trial and error, less math than gut instinct. You set the lens down and notice his hands, calloused from hours of this work, moving with a rhythm that's almost hypnotic. It's soothing, this repetitive motion, like a lullaby in the form of glass dust and elbow grease. You glance at the telescope tube, half assembled on the table, its wooden frame gleaming faintly in the candlelight. It's not much to look at, but it's a game changer. You imagine the first time Galileo pointed it at the sky, his breath catching as the moon's craters snapped into view. You're tempted to grab the telescope and run outside, but Galileo's already onto the next lens, muttering about magnification again. He's aiming for 8 times closer now, a leap from the Dutch spyglasses that barely tripled the view. You make a mental note to tease him about his ambition later, maybe over some of that bread he's ignoring. As you polish, the room feels smaller, cozier, like the world's problems are paused for a while. The moon's light spills through the window, painting the floor in silver patches. You're starting to get why Galileo's so obsessed. This isn't just about seeing the moon. It's about proving the universe isn't what everyone thinks. You yawn, the late hour creeping in, but the gentle scratch of the polishing cloth keeps you grounded. Galileo's humming now, some tuneless melody, and you can't tell if he's lost in thought or just trying to stay awake. Either way, you're in this together, crafting a window to the stars, one slow, dusty grind at a time. You're back in Pisa, the moon still glowing like a cosmic nightlight, but now you're outside, standing in a chilly courtyard with Galileo, the telescope propped on a wobbly stool. You're aiming it at the moon, your breath fogging in the crisp air, and the craters come into focus, jagged, shadowy, like a storybook etched in stone. This is the moment Galileo's telescope reveals the moon's true face, a mainstream physics fact. The moon isn't a perfect sphere but a rugged world with mountains and valleys, defying the church's claim of heavenly perfection. It's a simple observation, but in 1609, it's like flipping the script on the entire cosmos. Galileo's grinning beside you, his eyes glinting with mischief. He points out a crater he's nicknamed the Big One, and you can't help but smirk at his enthusiasm for something so lunar. Here's the quirky tidbit. Galileo once tried to measure a crater's depth by guessing how shadows fell, sketching wild estimates that made his friends roll their eyes. You imagine him squinting at the moon, muttering numbers like a sleep-deprived poet, and you stifle a laugh. Your hands are cold on the telescope, which wobbles every time a breeze sneaks by. It's not exactly high-tech, more like a glorified paper towel roll, but it's working. You adjust the lens, and the moon's surface sharpens, revealing a landscape that feels oddly familiar, like a hiking trail you've never walked. The craters are stark, some deep and dark, others shallow and soft. You wonder what it'd be like to stroll there, kicking up moon dust, leaving footprints for no one to find. Galileo's whispering now, describing the moon's seas. Flat plains he thinks are water, though you know they're just ancient lava beds. It's a rare moment where you're ahead of him, but you keep quiet, letting him dream. Physicists still argue whether Galileo's moon observations were more about science or rebellion. Was he just curious? Or was he poking the church on purpose? You tilt the telescope slightly, catching a new angle on a crater's edge, and feel a thrill that's both calm and electric. The moon feels closer, almost intimate, like it's sharing a secret with you. You glance at Galileo, who's scribbling notes on a scrap of paper, his quill scratching like a lullaby. You're tempted to joke about his handwriting. Seriously, it's worse than a doctor's, but you're too caught up in the view. The courtyard around you is silent, save for the rustle of leaves and the occasional bark of a distant dog. You're starting to feel the late hour, your eyelids heavy, but the moon's glow keeps you anchored. Galileo's muttering about magnification again, saying he wants to make the telescope stronger, maybe 10 times closer. You nod, half listening, imagining a future where telescopes are as common as smartphones. For now, though, this shaky tube is all you've got, and it's enough to make the universe feel a little less lonely. You shift your weight, the cobblestones hard under your feet, and notice a faint ache in your neck from craning upward. Galileo doesn't seem to care about comfort. He's too busy pointing out another crater, calling it the grumpy one, for no reason you can fathom. You chuckle, picturing him naming every dent in the moon like they're his pets. The telescope wobbles again, and you steady it with a sigh. This is slow science, the kind that demands patience and a good scarf for these chilly nights. As you peer through the lens, the moon's rugged beauty feels like a quiet gift, lulling you into a calm that's perfect for drifting off. You're in a dimly lit room in Pisa now, the moon's glow sneaking through a cracked window, casting flickers on a table cluttered with wine cups and tattered books. You're eavesdropping on a heated debate among church scholars, their voices low but sharp, as they dissect Galileo's lunar discoveries. The mainstream physics fact is stark. Galileo's telescope revealed the moon's craters and mountains, proving it's a physical body like Earth, not a perfect celestial orb as the church teaches. This challenges the Aristotelian cosmos, where heavens are supposed to be flawless, and you can feel the tension in the air, like a storm brewing over a calm sea. The scholars are pacing, their robes swishing, and one of them, a wiry priest with ink-stained fingers, slams a fist on the table, muttering about heresy. You catch Galileo's name, spoken like it's a bad taste. Here's the quirky tidbit. One scholar insists the moon's craters are just optical tricks from Galileo's lenses, claiming he polished them wrong on purpose. You stifle a laugh, imagining Galileo smirking somewhere, knowing his glasswork is better than their theology. You're tempted to whisper that the moon's scars are real, but you're just a fly on the wall, soaking in the drama. The room smells of wax and old parchment, and you notice a candle flickering, throwing shadows that dance like the craters you saw last night. The scholars argue in circles, quoting Aristotle and scripture, while you lean against the wall, your mind drifting to Galileo's telescope. It's just a tube and some glass, yet it's unraveling centuries of dogma. You wonder how it feels to be Galileo, knowing your discovery is rattling cages. Physicists still argue whether he anticipated this backlash or just stumbled into it, too curious to care. One scholar, calmer than the rest, suggests the moon's imperfections might reflect God's creativity, not chaos. You nod silently, liking his vibe, but the others scoff, their voices rising. You're starting to feel the late hour, the room's warmth making your eyelids heavy. The debate's rhythm, clipped arguments, pauses, sips of wine, feels oddly soothing, like a podcast you'd fall asleep to. You imagine Galileo outside, pointing his telescope at the moon again, ignoring this fuss. You're tempted to sneak out and join him, but the scholars' voices pull you back, their words blending into a hypnotic hum. The table's littered with diagrams, some showing the old geocentric universe. Earth at the center, stars and planets spinning obediently around it. Galileo's moon, with its messy craters, doesn't fit that picture. You trace a finger over a sketch, feeling the rough paper, and wonder how one man's lens could spark such chaos. A scholar mutters about dangerous ideas, and you can't help but grin. Dangerous? It's just a guy squinting at the sky. But in 1609, truth is a tightrope, and Galileo's wobbling on it. You yawn, the candlelight softening the room's edges, and notice a stray quill rolling across the table. It's a small thing, but it reminds you of Galileo's sketches, those wild lines capturing the moon's face. The scholars are winding down now, their voices quieter, like they're tired of their own arguments. You feel a strange calm, as if the moon itself is watching, unbothered by their noise. The debate's not over, but it's fading, and you're ready to slip back to Galileo's courtyard, where the telescope waits under the stars, promising more secrets in its shaky, moonlit glow. You're back under the starry Pisa sky, the air cool and sharp, standing beside Galileo as he adjusts his telescope, now pointed at Jupiter, its pale glow a faint smudge against the night. You're tracking its moons, tiny specks that shift night after night, and this is the mainstream physics fact. Galileo's observations of Jupiter's moons, later named the Galilean moons, prove that not everything orbits Earth, dismantling the geocentric model. It's a quiet revolution, unfolding through a wobbly lens, and you feel like you're spying on the universe's private diary. Galileo's muttering beside you, counting the specks. Io, Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, though he hasn't named them yet. He calls them stars for now, and you can't help but smirk at his enthusiasm, like a kid spotting fireflies. Here's the quirky tidbit. Galileo once mistook a fly on his lens for a new moon, scribbling it into his notes before realizing his error. You imagine him squinting, then cursing, and you bite back a laugh, adjusting the telescope as it sways on its makeshift stand. The thing's so rickety, you're half convinced it'll collapse before Jupiter reveals more. You peer through the lens, and Jupiter's moons are faint but real, like distant lanterns bobbing in a cosmic sea. You're struck by how small they look, yet they're rewriting the rules of the heavens. Galileo's sketching again, his quill scratching faster than a caffeinated scribe. You notice the moonlight glinting off his inkpot, casting a soft glow, and it's soothing, like the hum of a fan you forgot was on. Physicists still argue whether Galileo grasped the full weight of this discovery. Did he know these moons would bury the old cosmology, or was he just chasing pretty lights? The courtyard's quiet, save for the rustle of Galileo's papers and the occasional chirp of a cricket. You're tempted to joke about naming a moon after that fly he saw, but he's too focused, muttering about orbits and timing. You try to follow his math, something about periods of revolution, but it's like deciphering a sleepy lullaby. Instead, you focus on the view, the way Jupiter's light feels both distant and intimate. It's calming, this slow dance of moons, each one circling in its own rhythm, oblivious to the chaos it's causing back on Earth. You shift your stance, the cobblestones digging into your feet, and notice a faint ache from standing so long. Galileo doesn't seem to care. He's lost in his sketches, his beard catching stray ink drops. You wonder how he stays awake, fueled by nothing but starlight and stubbornness. The telescope wobbles again, and you steady it, feeling like a co-conspirator in this cosmic heist. Jupiter's moons are proof the universe doesn't revolve around you or Earth, and that thought is both humbling and oddly relaxing, like sinking into a warm bath. As you watch, the moons seem to drift, though you know it's just the Earth turning, carrying you along. You yawn, the night's chill creeping into your bones, but the telescope's view keeps you tethered. Galileo's muttering something about publishing these findings, and you can sense the trouble brewing, like clouds gathering on a clear night. For now, though, it's just you, him, and Jupiter's moons, glowing softly through a lens that's changing everything. The steady scratch of his quill and the faint creak of the telescope are the perfect soundtrack for drifting off, under a sky that feels a little closer to night. You're strolling along Venice's canals now, the moon reflecting in the rippling water like a shattered mirror, with Galileo striding beside you, his telescope tucked under his arm like a prized umbrella. You're headed to a meeting with wealthy merchants, where he's pitching his invention as more than a stargazing toy. The mainstream physics fact here is magnification. Galileo's telescope, now boasting 8 times magnification, makes distant objects, like ships on the horizon, appear closer, a practical trick that's got these traders buzzing. In 1609, this is a game changer, not just for stars but for commerce, and you're about to see Galileo work the room. The air smells of salt and fish, and you dodge a puddle as Galileo gestures wildly, explaining how his device can spot rival ships before they dock. Here's the quirky tidbit. One merchant, squinting through the telescope, swore he saw a mermaid on a distant boat, sparking a rumor Galileo had to politely debunk. You chuckle, picturing him biting his tongue as the merchant rambled about fish tales. You're tempted to ask if he's seen any mermaids himself, but he's too focused, his boots clicking on the stone path, eyes glinting with salesman's charm. You reach a grand palazzo, its walls glowing faintly under torchlight, and step inside to a room full of skeptical faces. The merchants, draped in velvet, eye Galileo like he's selling snake oil. You stand in the corner, clutching a goblet of wine you don't drink, watching him set up the telescope by a window. He points it at a distant tower, and the merchants gasp as its details snap into view. Bricks, windows, even a bird perched on the roof. It's optics at work, bending light to shrink distance, but to them it's magic. You feel a quiet thrill, like you're in on a secret they don't fully grasp. Physicists still argue whether Galileo's pitch to the merchants was more about science or showmanship. Was he genuinely excited about trade applications, or just funding his starry obsession? You lean against the wall, the room's warmth making you drowsy, and notice the canal outside reflecting moonlight in soft, lulling waves. The merchants' voices rise and fall, haggling over prices, while Galileo's calm explanations cut through like a steady hum. You're starting to see why this guy's telescope is a big deal. It's not just about the moon, it's about power, money, and maybe a little ego. The telescope's wooden tube gleams in the candlelight, and you imagine the glass lenses inside, polished with the care you saw back in Pisa. You're tempted to joke about that mermaid rumor, maybe whisper it to the merchant nearest you, but the mood's too serious. One trader, stroking his beard, asks if the telescope can spot enemy fleets. Galileo nods, and you sense he's holding back a grin, knowing the real prize is Jupiter's moons, not some pirate ship. The room's buzz feels like a distant lullaby, and you yawn, the late hour creeping in, softened by the canal's gentle lap outside. As the meeting drags on, you notice a servant refilling candles, their flicker casting shadows that dance like the stars you've been chasing. Galileo's wrapping up, promising to deliver more telescopes, and you feel a strange calm, like you're floating on the canal itself. The merchants are sold, clapping him on the back, but you're already thinking of the night sky, where the telescope's true magic lies. The steady rhythm of their voices, the faint creak of the floorboards, and the moon's glow through the window are pulling you towards sleep, ready for another night with Galileo's starry dreams. You're back in Galileo's workshop, the moon casting a soft glow through the window, but now you're hunched over a cluttered table, squinting at a lens as Galileo explains how it bends light to make the stars feel closer. The mainstream physics fact is the law of refraction. Light changes speed and direction when it passes through glass, allowing Galileo's telescope to magnify distant objects by focusing their rays into a sharp image. It's the backbone of his invention, and you're knee-deep in the details, surrounded by glass scraps and the faint smell of sawdust. Galileo's holding a lens up to a candle, showing you how it warps the flame into a stretched, glowing arc. He's animated, tossing around terms like focal length, with the enthusiasm of a kid describing a new toy. Here's the quirky tidbit. He once tried using a cracked lens to see if it'd create a double star effect, only to get a headache from the blurry mess. You chuckle, imagining him rubbing his eyes, muttering about useless fractures. You're tempted to tease him about it, but you're too busy holding a lens yourself, feeling its cool weight, trying to catch the candle's glow just right. The workshop feels cozy, the air thick with the scent of wax and wood. You notice a stray sketch on the table, a half-drawn moon with exaggerated craters, like Galileo's doodling his own lunar fairy tale. The physics of light is simple but mind-bending. The convex lens gathers light, the concave one focuses it, and together they make Jupiter's moons or a distant ship pop into view. You try aligning two lenses, mimicking Galileo's setup, but your hands fumble, and the image blurs. He laughs, saying something about practice, and you roll your eyes, wishing for a modern tripod to steady this thing. Physicists still argue whether Galileo fully understood refraction or just stumbled into it through trial and error. His notes are more art than math, full of sketches and guesses rather than equations. You lean back, the chair creaking, and feel the night's calm settling in, the moon's light painting the room in silver. The rhythm of Galileo's voice, low, steady, with a hint of sarcasm, feels like a bedtime story, lulling you despite the science. You're starting to get why he's obsessed with lenses. They're not just glass. They're windows to a universe that's bigger than anyone guessed. You glance at the telescope, propped in the corner like a sleepy sentinel, and remember those Jupiter moons from a few nights ago. The connection clicks. Without refraction, you'd never have seen their faint dance. You yawn, the late hour tugging at you, and notice a moth fluttering near the candle, its wings catching the light like a tiny lens. You're tempted to point it out, maybe make a joke about moth-powered telescopes. But Galileo's already onto the next lens, muttering about magnification limits. The guy's relentless, but his focus is soothing, like the hum of a fan you didn't realize you needed. The room's shadows shift as the candle burns lower, and you feel a strange peace, like you're floating in the soft glow of discovery. Galileo's explaining how light bends at precise angles, but you're half listening, caught in the rhythm of his words and the faint scratch of his quill. The telescope's promise, clearer stars, sharper moons, feels like a quiet gift, one you're sharing with him under this moonlit roof. As your eyelids grow heavy, the lenses on the table seem to shimmer, catching the night's magic, pulling you toward a dreamy drift where light and glass rewrite the sky. You're back in Galileo's workshop, the moonlight spilling through the window like a soft blanket, but now you're flipping through his sketchbook, its pages crinkled and smudged with ink. The mainstream physics fact is lunar topography. Galileo's telescope revealed the moon's craters and mountains, mapping a rugged surface that challenged the idea of a smooth, divine orb. You're holding his notes, filled with drawings that turn the moon into a tangible world, and it feels like you're peeking into his mind, where science and art blur into something almost magical. Galileo's nearby, polishing a lens, but he's grinning as you trace a finger over his sketch of a crater he's dubbed the Grumpy Bowl. Here's the quirky tidbit. He once sketched a moon crater as a smiling face, claiming it winked at him during a late-night observation. You chuckle, picturing him giggling alone under the stars, his quill scribbling a lunar emoji. You're tempted to draw a winking moon yourself, but the sketchbook's too precious. Its pages a mix of precise measurements and wild doodles, like a scientist's fever dream. The room smells of ink and old leather, and you notice a candle flickering, casting shadows that dance across the sketches. The moon drawings are detailed, craters with jagged edges, mountains casting long shadows, but some are pure fancy, like a sketch of a telescope shooting beams at the stars. You imagine Galileo, bleary-eyed, letting his imagination run wild after hours of stargazing. The physics is clear. His telescope magnified the moon enough to reveal its terrain, proving it's not a glowing disk but a world with stories etched in stone. You feel a quiet awe, like you're exploring a new land without leaving the room. Physicists still argue whether Galileo's sketches were more scientific or artistic. Did he prioritize accuracy, or was he just captivated by the moon's beauty? You turn a page, finding a diagram of light rays bending through lenses, and it pulls you back to that toast-powered time machine of a telescope. The sketches tie it all together. Optics made the moon's face visible, and Galileo's pen made it unforgettable. You yawn, the late hour settling in, the candle's glow softening the room's edges. His quill scratches faintly, a soothing rhythm, like rain on a distant roof. You lean back, the chair creaking, and notice a stray ink blot shaped like a tiny star. It's tempting to joke about it being Galileo's next discovery, but he's too focused, muttering about lunar seas that aren't seas at all. You flip to another sketch, this one showing a mountain's shadow stretching across a crater, and it's hypnotic, the way the lines curve and fade. The moon feels closer now, not just a light in the sky, but a place you could almost touch. The sketchbook's weight in your hands is grounding, its pages a bridge between Galileo's world and yours. As you linger on a drawing, the moonlight catches a smudge of ink, making it shimmer like a distant galaxy. Galileo's humming now, some tuneless melody, and you feel the night wrapping around you, calm and heavy. The sketches are more than art. They're proof the universe isn't what it seems, and you're part of that revelation. Your eyelids droop, the room's warmth pulling you towards sleep, but the moon's craters linger in your mind, their shadows stretching across a quiet, starry world that's lulling you into a gentle drift. You're in a shadowy Florence study now, the moonlight barely creeping through heavy curtains, as you stand beside Galileo, who's hunched over a desk littered with papers and a half-empty wine glass. The air's thick with the scent of dust and candle wax, and you're picking up on the tension as his lunar discoveries stir trouble with the church. The mainstream physics fact is the moon's physicality. Galileo's telescope shows it's a rocky world with craters, not a perfect celestial sphere, challenging the church's Aristotelian view of an unchanging, divine cosmos. It's a quiet fact, but it's shaking the foundations of 1609 theology. Galileo's muttering, his fingers smudged with ink, as he drafts a letter defending his findings. You catch a glimpse of his words, sharp but careful, like he's tiptoeing around a sleeping lion. Here's the quirky tidbit. He once hid a tiny moon sketch in a letter to a priest, hoping a doodle might soften the guy's frown. You smirk, imagining the priest squinting at a crater instead of scripture, probably not amused. You're tempted to nudge Galileo and ask if he's got more sneaky sketches up his sleeve, but he's too focused, his quill scratching like a metronome. The room feels heavy, the kind of heavy that makes you want to curl up and nap, but the stakes keep you alert. The church's view is clear. The heavens are perfect, Earth is the messy center, and Galileo's moon, with its scars and shadows, is a problem. You glance at a book on the desk, its cover worn, filled with Aristotle's tidy cosmos. Galileo's telescope, that wobbly tube you've been lugging around, says otherwise. It's not just optics. It's a challenge to centuries of dogma, and you can feel the weight of that in the room's silence. Physicists still argue whether Galileo's lunar claims were a deliberate jab at the church or just an honest observation he couldn't keep quiet. You lean against the desk, the wood creaking, and notice a faint moonbeam slipping through the curtain, painting a sliver of light across the floor. It's calming, like a reminder that the moon's still up there, unbothered by human squabbles. Galileo's voice is low, almost a whisper, as he reads his letter aloud, testing phrases. The rhythm's soothing, like a bedtime story, even if the story's about cosmic rebellion. You yawn, the late hour tugging at you, and spot a candle flickering, its flame wobbling like one of Jupiter's moons. You're tempted to joke about it being a new discovery, but the mood's too serious. The church's frown isn't just about the moon. It's about control, about keeping the heavens untouchable. Galileo's not backing down, though, and you admire his stubbornness, even if it's a little reckless. You imagine him pointing that telescope at the sky again, ignoring the priests, chasing truth over comfort. The study's shadows shift as the candle burns lower, and you feel a strange peace, like you're floating between Galileo's defiance and the moon's quiet glow. His quill keeps scratching, a steady sound that blends with the distant hum of Florence's night, cartwheels, a stray dog's bark. You're starting to drift, the tension in the room softening into a lullaby of ink and moonlight. Galileo's fight feels far away now, like a story you're hearing through a dream, and the moon's craters, those rugged secrets, are pulling you towards sleep, calm and steady under a sky that's starting to feel like home. You're back in Galileo's Pisa workshop, the moonlight filtering through a dusty window, casting a pale glow on a workbench cluttered with tools and half-finished telescope parts. You're tinkering with his latest contraption, a shaky wooden tube that's giving you blurry views of the stars, and Galileo's muttering about fixes like a mechanic fussing over a stubborn cart. The mainstream physics fact is telescope optics. The quality of magnification depends on precise lens shapes and alignment, but Galileo's early designs are plagued by flaws like chromatic aberration, where colors fringe and blur the image. It's a technical hurdle, and you're elbow deep in it trying to make this thing work. Galileo hands you a lens, its edge chipped, and you hold it up, watching it distort the candlelight into a rainbow smear. He sighs, Admitting these imperfections are why the moon sometimes looks like it's underwater. Here's the quirky tidbit. He once tried waxing a lens to smooth its flaws, only to ruin it and spend a day scraping wax off his fingers. You chuckle, picturing him cursing as the wax stuck like glue, and you're tempted to tease him about it, but he's already fiddling with a new lens, muttering about better curves. The workshop smells of wood and melted wax, and you notice a stray screw rolling across the table, glinting in the moonlight. You're trying to steady the telescope on a makeshift mount, a stack of books and a wobbly stool. That's about as stable as a sleepy toddler. The physics is straightforward. Light must pass through perfectly shaped lenses to focus clearly, but Galileo's grinding skills aren't quite there yet. You align the lenses, squinting through the tube, and get a fuzzy view of a star. It's frustrating, but there's a calm in the trial and error, like solving a puzzle with no deadline. Physicists still argue whether Galileo's telescope improvements were driven by optics knowledge or sheer stubbornness. His notes are more sketches than equations, and you flip through one nearby, spotting a doodle of a lens with an arrow labeled, "Fix this." You yawn, the late hour creeping in, the room's quiet hum, Galileo's muttering, the creak of the workbench, lulling you like a soft fan. You're tempted to joke about using that waxy lens as a paperweight, but the telescope's wobble keeps you focused. You adjust it again, and the star sharpens slightly, a tiny victory that feels like a hug from the universe. The moonlight paints the floor in silver patches, and you feel a strange peace, like you're part of something bigger than this rickety setup. Galileo's muttering about focal lengths now, his voice a steady drone that blends with the night sounds. Crickets, a distant dog. You try another lens, and the star's edges blur again, but you don't mind. It's soothing, this slow dance of tweaking and peering, like knitting a scarf you'll never finish. The telescope's flaws are part of its charm, a reminder that even geniuses fumble in the dark. As you tinker, the candle flickers, casting shadows that wiggle like Jupiter's moons from a few nights ago. You remember those specks, proof the cosmos doesn't spin around Earth, and it makes this blurry star feel like a small step toward truth. Galileo's humming now, some off-key tune, and you lean back, the chair creaking, your eyelids heavy. The workshop's warmth, the faint scratch of his quill, and the moon's glow are pulling you towards sleep, a gentle drift where lenses and stars blur into a dreamy, cosmic haze. You're in a candlelit room in Florence now, the moonlight slipping through a narrow window, as you pore over a stack of letters between Galileo and his rival Johannes Kepler, their words crackling with ideas about lenses and stars. The air smells of ink and old parchment, and you're leaning over a table, feeling like a detective unraveling a cosmic pen pal saga. The mainstream physics fact is Kepler's contribution to optics. His work on light refraction improved lens designs, inspiring Galileo to refine his telescope's blurry views. You're caught in the middle of their friendly rivalry, and it's as gripping as a slow-burn bedtime story. Galileo's pacing, reading a letter aloud, his voice tinged with amusement at Kepler's latest jab about lens curves. Here's the quirky tidbit. Kepler once sent Galileo a sketch of a telescope shaped like a fish, joking it might swim through the stars. You grin, imagining Galileo rolling his eyes at the doodle, probably tempted to reply with a sketch of his own, like that winking moon crater from his sketchbook. You're itching to add your own silly drawing to the pile, but you settle for tracing a finger over Kepler's spiky handwriting, its loops glowing faintly in the candlelight. The letters are a mix of science and sass, with Kepler pushing Galileo to rethink his lens grinding tricks. You can almost hear Kepler's voice, thousands of miles away, urging sharper focus to catch Jupiter's moons more clearly. The physics is simple but crucial. Better lenses mean less distortion, turning fuzzy stars into crisp points. You glance at Galileo's telescope in the corner, its wooden tube looking humbler than ever, and wonder how much Kepler's ideas shaped it. The room's quiet, save for the rustle of paper and Galileo's occasional chuckle, and it's soothing, like a fan humming in the background. Physicists still argue whether Galileo and Kepler's rivalry was more collaborative or competitive. Did they share ideas freely, or were they secretly trying to outshine each other? You yawn, the late hour settling in, the candles flicker casting shadows that dance like the moons you've been tracking. You're tempted to joke about Kepler's fish telescope, maybe whisper it to Galileo, but he's too busy scribbling a reply, his quill scratching like a lullaby. The letters feel alive, each one a thread tying you to a bigger story, where lenses and stars rewrite the sky. You lean back, the chair creaking, and notice a stray ink blot on a letter, shaped like a tiny comet. It's a small thing, but it pulls you back to those Jupiter moons, their orbits a quiet rebellion against the old cosmos. Galileo's muttering about magnification again, inspired by Kepler's math, and you feel a calm pride, like you're part of their starry correspondence. The moonlight paints the room in soft silver, and the rhythm of Galileo's voice, low, steady, a little sarcastic, wraps around you like a warm blanket. You're drifting now, the letters blurring into a dreamy haze, as if Kepler's fish telescope is swimming through your thoughts. The night feels endless, but gentle, the kind of endless that makes you want to close your eyes and float. Galileo folds his letter, sealing it with wax, and you imagine it traveling across Europe, carrying lens secrets and starlight. The room's warmth, the faint scratch of the quill, and the moon's glow are pulling you towards sleep, a soft slide into a world where rivalries and refractions blend into a cosmic lullaby, lulling you under a sky that's starting to feel like yours. You're in Galileo's study in Florence, the moonlight spilling through a cracked window, casting a silvery glow on a table strewn with papers, compasses, and a half-eaten apple. You're hunched over with him, scratching out calculations about the moon's craters and their connection to cosmic motion, the air thick with the scent of ink and dust. The mainstream physics fact is orbital mechanics. Galileo's observations of the moon's features and Jupiter's moons suggest bodies move in predictable orbits, hinting at a universe governed by mathematical laws, not divine whim. This heady stuff, and you're scribbling alongside him, feeling like a co-conspirator in a starry math puzzle. Galileo's muttering about arcs and periods, his quill dancing across the page like it's chasing the moon itself. Here's the quirky tidbit. He once tried timing a crater's shadow with a pendulum made from a spoon and string, nearly knocking over a candle in his excitement. You smirk, picturing him swinging that spoon like a kid with a toy, and you're tempted to grab the apple and toss it into orbit just to see his reaction. Instead, you focus on the numbers, rough estimates of how long it takes the moon to spin, your hands smudged with ink. The study's quiet, save for the faint creak of the floorboards and the occasional hoot of an owl outside. The math is simple but profound. Orbits follow patterns, like the Jupiter moons you saw nights ago, circling in steady rhythms. You trace a curve on the paper, mimicking the moon's path, and it's soothing, like drawing waves on a beach. Galileo's calculations are messy, more instinct than precision, but they're building a bridge between the moon's craters and a bigger cosmic story. You feel a calm thrill, like you're decoding the universe's heartbeat. Physicists still argue whether Galileo's orbital guesses were a leap toward Newton's laws or just lucky hunches. You lean back, the chair groaning, and notice the moonlight glinting off the apple, its curve oddly like the moon's. The numbers blur a bit, your eyes are tired, but the rhythm of Galileo's quill, scratching away, feels like a lullaby. You're tempted to joke about his spoon pendulum, maybe ask if he's got a fork for Venus, but he's too focused, muttering about Kepler's letters and their talk of ellipses. That fish-shaped telescope sketch pops into your mind, and you stifle a laugh. The papers are littered with sketches, craters, orbits, even a doodle of a moon with a tiny crown. You wonder if Galileo's half-dreaming, his math blending with the moonlight's glow. The physics ties back to those lenses you polished in Pisa. Without them, these orbits would be invisible, just church-approved guesses. You yawn, the late hour tugging at you, the room's warmth wrapping you like a soft blanket. The calculations are hypnotic, their curves and numbers a quiet dance that pulls you toward the stars. Even as your eyelids grow heavy, the moonlight shifts, painting the floor in silver streaks, and you feel a gentle peace, like you're floating in the orbits you're sketching. Galileo's voice is a low hum now, blending with the night sounds. Crickets, a distant cart. You're drifting, the math fading into a dreamy haze, the moon's craters and their shadows lingering like a story you're too sleepy to finish. The steady scratch of the quill, the faint glow of the candle, and the universe's quiet rhythm are lulling you into a calm, starry slumber, where numbers and moonlight weave a soft, cosmic dream. You're in a bustling Florence square now, the moonlight washing over a crowd gathered around Galileo, who's set up his telescope like a street performer with a magic trick. The air smells of roasted chestnuts and leather, and you're pressed shoulder to shoulder with curious townsfolk, their murmurs rising as they wait to peer through the lens. The mainstream physics fact is observational astronomy. Galileo's public demonstrations of his telescope, showing the moon's craters and Jupiter's moons, make the cosmos accessible, turning abstract science into a shared spectacle. It's 1609, and you're part of a starry show that's rewriting what people believe about the sky. Galileo's voice carries over the crowd, calm but theatrical, as he describes the moon's rugged face. He's in his element, pointing to the telescope like it's a key to the heavens. Here's the quirky tidbit. One onlooker, a baker, swore the moon's craters looked like his failed bread loaves, sparking a laugh Galileo didn't correct. You grin, imagining the baker squinting through the lens, seeing doughy moons, and you're tempted to whisper that the craters are more like cosmic pancakes. Instead, you nudge closer, catching a glimpse of the telescope's wooden tube, its lens glinting in the torchlight. The crowd's excitement is infectious, but there's a soothing rhythm to it. Their gasps, Galileo's steady explanations, the shuffle of feet on cobblestones. You finally get your turn at the telescope, and the moon's craters snap into view, stark and shadowy, like a map of a world you'll never walk. The physics is simple. The telescope's lenses bend light to magnify distant objects, but to this crowd, it's a miracle. You feel a quiet awe, like you're sharing a secret with strangers, all of you staring at the same lunar scars under the same silver sky. Physicists still argue whether Galileo's public shows were about education or ego. Did he want to teach, or just bask in the applause? You step back, letting a kid with wide eyes take your spot, and notice the moonlight painting the square in soft patches. The crowd's chatter blends with the night's sounds. Crickets, a distant lute, and it's lulling, like a fan humming in a quiet room. You're tempted to joke about the baker's bread moon theory, maybe start a rumor about cosmic pastries, but Galileo's already calling the next person, his voice a steady anchor in the chaos. You lean against a stone wall, the coolness grounding you, and watch the crowd's faces light up, one by one, as they see the moon's true face. The telescope's wobbly stand sways slightly, but it holds, just like it did in that Pisa courtyard where you first met those craters. You yawn, the late hour creeping in, the square's energy softening into a dreamy hum. Galileo's pointing out Jupiter now, and you remember those moons, their orbits a quiet rebellion against the old cosmos. The crowd's gasps are fainter now, like they're all sinking into the same starry trance. The moonlight shifts, catching a glint on a woman's necklace, and it feels like a nod from the universe. Galileo's wrapping up, promising another show tomorrow, and you feel a gentle calm, like you're floating in the crowd's shared wonder. The cobblestones under your feet, the faint scent of chestnuts, and the telescope's steady presence are pulling you towards sleep, a soft drift where the moon's craters and the crowd's murmurs blend into a cosmic lullaby, carrying you under a sky that feels closer than ever. You're standing in a quiet Florence garden now, the moonlight filtering through olive trees, casting dappled shadows on the grass where you sit with Galileo, his telescope resting beside him like a loyal dog. The air smells of earth and faint lavender, and you're reflecting on how his lunar discoveries have reshaped humanity's view of the cosmos. The mainstream physics fact is the paradigm shift. Galileo's telescope, by revealing the moon's craters and Jupiter's moons, proved the universe isn't Earth-centered, paving the way for modern astronomy. It's a legacy that feels both grand and intimate, and you're soaking it in under the starry sky. Galileo's quieter tonight, his usual chatter softened, as he traces a finger through the dirt, sketching a crude moon. Here's the quirky tidbit. He once told a friend he dreamed the moon was a giant cheese wheel, craters and all, and woke up hungry. You smirk, picturing him munching bread while staring at the sky, and you're tempted to ask if he's got any cheese stashed nearby. Instead, you lean back, the grass cool beneath you, and let the night's calm wrap around you like a soft blanket. The telescope's wooden tube gleams faintly, a reminder of those Pisa nights when you first saw the moon's rugged face. Its lenses, polished through trial and error, showed a universe that's messy, not perfect, and you feel a quiet pride, like you've been part of that revelation. The physics is simple but profound. Magnification let Galileo map the moon and track Jupiter's moons, challenging the Church's tidy cosmos. You glance at the sky, where the moon hangs like a worn coin, its craters now familiar, like old friends you've studied in his sketchbook. Physicists still argue whether Galileo's work sparked a scientific revolution or just nudged it along. Did he change everything, or was he one voice in a growing chorus? You yawn, the late hour settling in, the garden's stillness lulling you with the rustle of leaves and a distant owl's call. The telescope sits there, silent but heavy with meaning, like that toast-powered time machine you've been lugging through this journey. You're tempted to joke about it being a cosmic key, but Galileo's lost in thought, his fingers still tracing lunar shapes in the dirt. The moonlight paints the garden in silver, and you notice a beetle crawling across the grass, its shell catching the light like a tiny star. It's a small thing, but it pulls you back to the bigger picture. Galileo's telescope didn't just show craters. It showed humanity's place in a vast, untidy universe. You feel a gentle awe, like you're floating in that cosmos, untethered but safe. His voice breaks the silence, low and musing, as he wonders if the stars have their own moons. The question hangs there, unanswered, blending with the night's soft hum. Crickets, wind, your own slow breaths. You lie back, the grass cradling you, and the stars seem to pulse above, each one a story Galileo's telescope helped tell. The garden's peace is hypnotic, the moonlight's glow softening the world's edges. You're drifting now, the telescope's legacy a quiet weight in your mind. Its wooden frame and fragile lenses a bridge to the infinite. The night feels endless, but kind, pulling you toward sleep with the steady rhythm of Galileo's voice and the moon's familiar craters, glowing like a lullaby in the sky. You're lying on a soft blanket in that Florence garden, the moonlight spilling through olive branches, weaving a silver tapestry across your view of the stars. The air is cool, scented with lavender and earth, and Galileo's telescope rests nearby, its wooden frame catching the moon's glow like a quiet sentinel. You're reflecting on his enduring lunar legacy, how those craters you first saw in Pisa have become a symbol of curiosity's triumph. The mainstream physics fact is the foundation of modern astronomy. Galileo's telescope, by revealing the moon's rugged surface, showed that the heavens are physical, not divine, inspiring centuries of skyward questions. It's a thought that feels vast yet soothing, like a lullaby sung by the stars themselves. Galileo's beside you, his voice softer now, almost a whisper, as he muses about the moon's shadows. Here's the quirky tidbit. He once told a student the moon's craters reminded him of his mother's polenta pot, all dents and stories. You smile, imagining him comparing cosmic scars to kitchenware, and you're tempted to murmur that the moon's more like a cosmic quilt, patched with dreams. But you stay quiet, letting the night's calm settle over you, the grass beneath you cool and grounding, like the Earth's gentle embrace. The telescope's lenses, those fragile bits of glass you helped polish, brought the moon close enough to touch, its craters a map of truth over myth. You picture them now, their shadows stretching long and soft, like the sketches in Galileo's notebook. Physicists still argue whether his lunar legacy is more about science or defiance. Did he aim to rewrite the cosmos, or just follow where the light led? The question floats above you, unanswered, blending with the rustle of leaves and the faint chirp of crickets. A rhythm as steady as that fan hum you love. Your eyelids grow heavy, the stars blurring into a gentle haze, each one a tiny echo of the moons you tracked with Galileo. The garden feels like a cocoon, its quiet wrapping you in a warmth that's both earthly and cosmic. You imagine those Jupiter moons, orbiting in their silent dance, and the memory of their faint glow through the telescope feels like a gift, a secret shared under this endless sky. The moonlight softens, its silver light pooling around you, and you feel yourself drifting, carried by the night's embrace. The telescope's legacy a quiet anchor in your thoughts. The world slows, the stars pulse gently, and Galileo's voice fades to a whisper, recounting a night when the moon seemed to wink back. You're floating now, the grass beneath you a cradle, the universe above a blanket of light. The craters, the lenses, the stubborn math of orbits. They all blur into a dreamy glow, pulling you deeper into a calm where questions don't need answers. The night sounds, leaves, crickets, your own slow breaths, melt into a lullaby, and you're slipping softly into a sleep where the moon's rugged face watches over you, its shadows a gentle promise of wonder. Wind down, and now, as you rest under this vast, starry sky, let the moonlight carry you further, its glow a soft hand guiding you to peace. The telescope's work is done, its lenses quiet, the craters it revealed now a familiar friend in your dreams. You're floating, weightless, the garden's cool grass fading as the universe wraps you in its calm embrace. Each star above pulses slowly, like a heartbeat, whispering that you're part of something boundless, yet safe. The night's rhythm, crickets, leaves, a distant breeze, cradles you, its tempo easing your thoughts into a gentle drift. Galileo's moon, with its scars and stories, lingers in your mind, not as a puzzle, but as a soft light to guide you. Let your breath slow, each one deeper, softer, as the stars blur into a warm haze. You're safe here, held by the night. The cosmos a quiet lullaby that carries you to sleep, whispering of craters and dreams in a voice as gentle as moonlight.